Heading out to the Star Mechanical guest line, and joining me today on the show to do a little Stanley Cup playoff preview is Kyle Bukauskas. You know him from Sportsnet and Hockey Night in Canada. Kyle, appreciate you hopping on, man.
Hey, Tyler. How you doing? Good to be with you.
Yeah, you are on the road right now. You're getting out to cover round one. We'll talk about a couple of the series as well, but I mean, you've been around now for a little bit. What Stanley Cup playoffs is this for you now with Sportsnet?
On the broadcast side, I've worked parts of each playoff since 2017. So 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, what is that? Is it 8 now?
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate to cover a portion of the finals in some capacity since 17 as well. And yeah, it's odd to think about now because for so long you're kind of the new person in the mix, and everything feels like you're doing it for the first time, and then years go by and stack up, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, you've been doing this for a little while now, and like you introduce yourself to a player that's just been called up, and like, yeah, I remember watching you growing up, and I'm like, it's too early for those. It's a bizarre existence, but still, these are the most fun times of the year. So excited to get back out onto the road. And I will say, it's like, and from traveling around, Tyler. So the Air Canada lounges and such typically are just full of business class travelers or frequent flyers, and traveling a bunch that I do throughout the year. You spend some time in there just to kill time in between flights. Every now and then, though, like you'll catch a familiar face. Like years ago, John Bartlett and I were in the lounge, and we met Eugene Levy, and it was, oh, this was really cool. Remember one time I was in, like, Gene Simmons comes in, and he had all the Air Canada staff was making sure. Today I'm in there. I don't even remember the actor Sam Waterston, I think is his like, he was an original cast member of Law and Order. If anyone watched the Newsroom on HBO back in the mid 2010s, there he was a cast member on that as well. I don't think it was him, but it was like a dead ringer where I was like trying not to stare, but I'm going, it looks so much like him. So anyway, that's been the highlight of my day so far.
That is good. So what was the first cup final you would have done? Would that have been Pittsburgh, San Jose?
Pittsburgh, Nashville. I did the 3 games in Pittsburgh, games 1, 2, and 5. I wasn't working on the broadcast then, but so I did that one, and then 2020 was the first like broadcast I worked on in the final. That was at the Bubble in Edmonton, Dallas, and Tampa, and I've been really fortunate to be on the broadcast each of the years since then, and we'll see what the run looks like this spring for me.
I've had this conversation with Frank Saravalli before, and he talks about how his first couple of years on the beat, like, again, he's in his early 20s. He was covering those Flyers teams, and he covered the one that went all the way to the Cup final. He talked about how intimidating it was for him as like a young guy in the beat, going up and having Chris Pronger in his scrums, and the way Pronger would just kind of bat him around and stuff. Did you ever have a moment like that early on in those first few Cup finals, where you're kind of step back and like, whoa, this is very intense?
Yeah, it's more so like, honestly, for me, it's like the other members of the media that are around, right? Like, certainly when you get to a Cup final, obviously you have those that worked on the beat for the two teams that are playing in the final, but you also have a lot of national media that come in, and reporters just from all over North America that cover the final series of the year. So certainly early on, like, just having the stomach to like ask a question in front of all of those folks that have been doing it for so long was really intimidating. So between that, I almost felt that more so than whether it was a player or a coach in particular that had been doing it and been around a lot longer than I have. That's where I got a lot of my nerves from, was more so just the other reporters in the room and not wanting to be the one to ask a stupid question. Though I'm sure I managed to fill that blank there a couple of times.
Fair enough. So you're on the road. You're heading out to cover Leafs Bruins in round one. And this is a really interesting series for me because, I mean, technically Toronto, they're one of the 4 Canadian teams. They are technically the only one who's an underdog, but I don't know if they're that much of an underdog this year against this Bruins team.
Yeah, it's because for like a week, it felt like, who would they rather match up against, Boston or Florida. And there's always going to be the ghosts of 2013, of 2018 and 2019. But yeah, to your point, Tyler, like, this is such a different Maple Leafs lineup, feel, look, all of it than the ones that would have gone 7 and come up short against Boston all those years earlier. I mean, that was a bit of time ago now too. Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander were really just becoming the stars that they are now in their early 20s, and now they seem to be right in the middle portion of their primes. Like, I feel for Toronto, are you still kind of listed as an underdog? I suppose so. Depending on how their health looks for game one, and how they can fill out the lower parts of their lineup. I like the forward matchups more against Boston than maybe you would against a team like Florida. But thing with the Bruins, I mean, they are the Bruins for one. I mean, they've got a great blue line. Obviously, their tandem in net. That's going to be a really interesting one to follow, Tyler. Like, if Toronto gets up in the series early or something like that, a year ago they had gone back and forth with the tandem, Swayman Allmark all year, and then playoffs come and he rides with Allmark until Game 7. Right, made the switch and it was too late by then. And he and even Jim Montgomery had made the comment, like, I remember early in the season, this is like November we're talking here, where he had said at that point, like, he was going to handle the goaltending situation in the playoffs different than he did the year before. So clearly it's been on the minds for Boston here for quite some time. I think that's going to be an interesting one to watch. But I still think, though, the fact that they're starting on the road in Boston, it was never a bad thing to start away from home. Certainly for Toronto, certain distractions aren't going to be part of things to get the series going. But there's something about playing in that building, Tyler, in the postseason. I remember having a conversation with Jake Muzzin years ago about it. Like, as you would normally feel being on the road in the playoffs, it's going to be loud. But in that one, in the Garden there in particular, it's a mean crowd in there. And just with the goal horn, the way it kind of sounds and echoes through you, when it gets going in there, it's like, I remember Muzzin making the comment, like, you got to be careful as a player that it can be easy. The crowd can convince you that you're in a worse spot than you really are. So think about for a guy like Ilya Samsonov, assuming he starts game one on Saturday, how does he ride the wave? It's been such a remarkable turnaround for him this season. There's still a beast to be slayed here, a dragon to be slayed, I think, for Toronto. But I'm with you. Maybe if the odds suggest they're an underdog going in, I don't know if they should feel that way. Not unlike a couple years ago when Tampa was the underdog against Toronto and wins in Game 7. It very much felt like a pick'em series.
Yeah. There's a couple things that you touched on that I found interesting. The goaltending with Boston, like you said, if they go down by a couple of games in this series, what's Jim Montgomery going to do? But when he talks about how he's going to handle his goaltending differently, I'm just as curious to see what he'd do if they win the first 2 games. Because again, they have their success in the regular season on that rotation with both guys. If it's even 1-1, 2-0, whatever, I think if they're in control of the series, we might see him flip-flop a little bit and say, hey, it's gotten us here. I made the mistake last year. I want to ride both guys.
Yeah, and I think he will, right? I just felt like that admission months previous to say that he's going to handle it differently. You have to think. I think Allmark's had the better numbers kind of down the stretch here, but Swayman was really good, even though the rest of the team didn't have much to show it there when they got shut out against Washington there on Monday night. He only gave up the one goal. I think he once again that tandem's proved that you can be confident in either one. So. Naturally, I think he's been kind of keeping his cards close to his chest in terms of who's going to start game one on Saturday. But I think it does give you the flexibility, Tyler. At least now, whether, as you say, if you're up in the series and you decide to make a goaltending switch, then there isn't that sense of, oh man, like are they panicking here? Are they trying to correct a problem that isn't there? It's what they've done all year, and so whether things are going good or poorly for them out of the chute here in this series, just having both goalies see the net early on, I don't think would be a sign of, as I say, panic or weakness or indecision. It's really just the MO of what their team's been much of the last 2 seasons now.
And you touched on TD Garden and like what an intimidating atmosphere that is from your time bouncing around different series at different spots in the playoffs. Where does that rank? What are some other ones that are up there with the TD Garden for like truly intimidating barns that are hard to play in? Because I feel like every team loves to throw it out there and it's a little cliche of like home ice advantage. But I do think like even TD Garden on TV, you can tell it's different. What other ones for you have you been in and you're like, whoa, this is wild?
Yeah, I mean, it was too bad that they couldn't have full capacity when Montreal went on their run in 2021. But my first playoff series I covered was Montreal Ottawa in 2015. I just like my ears, like my head hurt leaving the building that night, just because of the noise in there. That of course is one. I put Boston right in there. I mean, there's a lot of most of the buildings in the postseason. They're loud, they're full. There's a different level of electricity than the regular season, as there should be. But in terms of that intimidation factor, those two are there. I never got the chance to work a game, the old the Coliseum there on Long Island, to get a chance to feel that up close. I did one game at UBS last year. It was the game that they actually clinched to go into the postseason. Haven't done a playoff game there, so I haven't got the full scope of the playoff landscape across the entire league. But I put those in there. I mean, Vegas certainly is. I mean, it's fun, of course, but it also does get going, and with the way, I mean, just as say the horn, the goal song, and then like the steam that's coming out there after a goal goes in, by the glass. There's a lot of factors that kind of make us feel like, oh man, the snowball is going downhill and it's in the wrong direction for us. Those are the ones that stand out to me. But as I say, I haven't done a whiteout series in Winnipeg. A couple games at Edmonton there a few years ago, but that was unfortunately when they ran out of steam against a Colorado team destined to win it all. So we'll maybe get a chance to experience a few more this spring here. We'll see, but those are the ones that immediately pop into my mind.
One more on the East, and then I want to ask you a bit about the Oilers and the Western Conference. But there's a Battle of Florida that we'll get in round one that should just be an unbelievable series as well. And it's, again, almost similar, I think, to that Toronto-Boston series where, yes, Tampa Bay is the lower seed. They're the underdog. But the way they've been playing over the last month, man, I think this is a Bolts team that might just do the old, again, it's a little cliche, but they just know how to flip that switch, don't they?
Don't you feel like the addition of Anthony Duclair, I feel, was like such a bigger impact than maybe you would think on the surface? Obviously, the way he plays, I just fresh off a cup run with Florida a year ago, but allowing kind of other players to slot other places in the lineup, it just completely changed their look because, I mean, there's no question they're a top-heavy team. They don't have the bottom six that they had when they were winning back-to-back cups and going to another Stanley Cup final and nearly taking it against the Avalanche. So they've had to rely on their big boys, and they've delivered much of the way here. Nikita Kucherov, of course, the front man in there, and Vasilevsky's looked like Vasilevsky, which is a game changer. 6 weeks ago, I remember like late February, I did a Monday night game there against Ottawa, and the Senators, of course, we know aren't going to the playoffs again this year. They went in there and just like walked over them, and this was 2 days after the Panthers had gone in on Saturday and beat them like 8-1. And I thought, man, I was starting to get a little nervous for where their lot in life was. But to your point, they've switched it on here and look a lot better. You think about in 2021 when they met, and that was just an absolute dogfight that Tampa won, I think, in 6 games. Right, Spencer Knight came in and kind of started to make things interesting. But I worked the series when they met a year later when Florida won the President's Trophy, beat Washington in round one. Tampa beat Toronto in 7 in round one, and they met in the second round. And it was like 2 completely different teams. Oh my gosh. Are you okay? Is that
people are going to see the picture, the random picture of child workers that's up in the hotel room. That is an incredibly awkward transition, but we're just gonna keep rolling. I'm not even gonna put it back up.
All right.
What were we talking about? The Bulls, that's right.
But it was like 2 teams in 2 different leagues. I thought there was like a Tampa team that had just won 2 Stanley Cups that were selling out for absolutely every moment, and a Panthers team that had scored their way to winning the President's Trophy that was so offense first that didn't know how to handle what Tampa threw at them, and Tampa swept them, and it was like an absolute manhandling. And I think that series played a big role in Bill Zito going out and getting Matthew Tkachuk and some of the other moves that was made that summer, because of course they have been a completely different team ever since they were beat by Tampa in 4 games that year. So now you're a different look again. The rivalry that was so one-sided for so many years, there's a legitimate chance for the Panthers to take one of their own here after things going the other way for so long. But it's going to be, I think, of the 4 series in the East, the 2 that are most interesting for me, I think, are the ones coming out of the Atlantic Division side. I'm hoping. I think that they run on opposite nights as Toronto Boston, so it's great for us to be able to watch those on the off nights selfishly, because it feels like it's going to be must-watch TV with the way both teams are going.
Yeah, the two Atlantic series should be absolute bangers. Let's go to the West, and it's going to be an absolute dogfight in the West. When you look at these matchups, like the fact that, one of Winnipeg or Colorado is going to be done in round one of Edmonton or Vegas is going to potentially be done in round one as well. And those are just sort of the guaranteed big dogs that are going to fall with the way the bracket's kind of lining up here. Is Edmonton truly in that elite group for you? Like, I mean, Dallas set themselves apart with an unbelievable regular season. Vancouver was, very good. They were elite wire to wire this year. Does Edmonton belong in that top tier group to you?
I kind of feel it. And again, like I feel sheepish kind of weighing in on this, knowing Tyler. I mean, you watch the Oilers way more than I do. You have much better insight on that team than I do, day to day, and just being around them as much as you are. But I think there's a chance there, and it helps the fact that, again, they're going the Pacific route versus the Central. You mentioned just what kind of a path that's going to be there for a team like Winnipeg if you're going to get out of that division. I like the way things are lining up for Edmonton much more. Even if you end up against Vancouver in the second round, which would be great as someone that works for a Canadian television network that broadcasts these things, to guarantee a Canadian team in the third round, always a good thing, but it would just be great for interest in the country, of course. But I think, if you're Edmonton there, depending on, you got to get there first, of course, but you've got to think you're in a position where you can win. Like I think, 2 years ago, again, you had a great run. Eventually you came against a team that was more ready to win than you are, and in a lot of ways the same thing happened a season ago, and eventually it kind of becomes your time, and of course you need so many things to go right. You need good goaltending. I'm a big fan of Stuart Skinner, and so I think there's absolutely a conversation to be had for them to be considered amongst the top groups there in the West, the way they turn the season around. They've got their nuclear weapons. I still, there's always going to be the question, I suppose, about the blue line, but I think there's certainly a path there I see for them, Tyler. Like, I'm curious, like, your sense, like what's the buzz around Edmonton? Like, is there legitimate belief that this could happen as opposed to false hope? Like, what are you reading on things there?
Yeah, I think it is a legitimate sense that this could be a better year. Like, you look at kind of what plagued them last season, and it was only McDavid and Draisaitl scoring in the playoffs. They didn't get anything from their bottom six. They didn't get anything from the other guys in their top six. And this season, Zach Hyman's obviously taking a massive step forward. And, Stuart Skinner let them down a bit with his performances in the playoffs. But, like, being a rookie goaltender of all in the Stanley Cup playoffs is an incredibly tall ask. I think year two, Stuart Skinner is going to be way better positioned to just deal with the adversity of being a starting goalie in the playoffs. So I think there is legit reason to think they're better suited this year to go on a deep run than they were a year ago, but they still have their flaws. I mean, everyone kind of does. And the other thing it always comes down to, and I feel like, hockey purists never want to make this a part of the conversation, you need to be so lucky to go on a deep Stanley Cup playoff run. Like, there are so many little moments. I mean, look at Florida last year. They're a goalpost away from going out in round one. And what do we remember that Florida team as last year if they lose to Boston? Just an afterthought that slipped in as the 8th seed and got beat by the Bruins. I even think about the Oilers last season. They're down 2-1 in the series to the LA Kings. They're on the road in LA. They're down 3-1. They come back in that game, but with 3 minutes left, Jack Campbell makes a massive breakaway stop. That goes in. The Oilers are down 3-1 in that series and probably hooped. Like, I feel like sometimes we don't recognize how much luck is involved in this whole thing.
I totally agree. And like getting the chance to work with Craig Simpson for years now. I mean, he talks about it all the time. Of course, he won 2 Stanley Cups there with Edmonton in 88 and 90. And he's like, just like those little moments that can not only change a period, a game, but to your point, a whole entire series. And you never know, when they're going to come exactly. But you need to be on the right side of them enough to be still standing when the calendar flips to May and then into June. There's so much of that goes on. Obviously, you need to be healthy, and I just it's fascinating again to look back, for any team's Stanley Cup run, and you can go back and find little moments where if it went the other way, how different of a narrative and reality is it? And that's a great part of why this is so compelling as a whole. But yeah, the luck factor always rears its head in one way, shape, or form, and you got to be on the right side of it enough, I think, to last.
Kyle, appreciate you hopping in and dealing with my incredibly confusing wall art in this hotel. Enjoy safe travels. Enjoy round one, man. Look forward to watching your work.
Okay, hopefully some hotel points coming your way.
What's up, Nation citizens? If you like that video, then you need to be subscribed to the Oilers Nation YouTube. Podcasts, live shows, exclusive interviews, and analysis. Everything you need from your favorite voices at Oilers Nation. And you don't want to miss any of it, so hammer that subscribe button.